I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes explaining a little bit about our vision for urban mobility and hopefully showing something that's pretty exciting and transformative for how we get around our cities and live in our cities, but also isn't as far away as you think and some of the changes we're making right now to deliver that. So I was going to start by perhaps explaining the problem, which it's pretty easy to demonize the car, mainly because there's just so many of them. There's about 1.2 billion in the world today. But the problem isn't really the car, but how we use it. So I bet next time you're in your car and you pull up at the traffic lights and you look left and right, I bet the cars next to you will just have one person in, and that's the driver. Because average occupancy in the UK for cars is only a shade over 1. So there's a lot of empty space in those cars, but it also means that there's a lot of cars making a lot of individual journeys. And these cause congestion, which impacts productivity for business, but also causes a lot of emissions. So over 20% of the world's emissions today come from transportation. But that's actually only 5% of the problem, because cars spend their time, most of their time, parked, sitting empty, about 95% of their time. And when we think about the land that has to be dedicated to storing those cars, there's a huge opportunity cost in that. So in central London today, about 16% of land is dedicated to parking. And we think about the pressures we have on housing, on leisure and community facilities, on green space. There could be much better use for that land than just storing lumps of metal. And so if that's where we are today, what's Uber's vision for the future? Well, we want to move from individual people in individual cars taking individual trips to actually a world where you can combine multiple modes of transport together in a seamless way to get from A to B. And we want to move to this vision because we believe that actually only by combining the best of lots of different modes of transportation can you really compete with the convenience and reliability of having your own car. Sometimes it's just too easy. Instead of thinking about when's the next bus, shall I get an Uber to the train station? Is the train going to arrive on time? It's just easier to pick up your keys and drive yourself. And so that's where we want to get to. But how are we going to achieve this? And really, there's 3 pillars to our vision and how we think we're going to get there. The first is shared modes of transport. The second is electrification and the move to zero-emission vehicles. And then the third is multimodal transport. And I'll now touch on each of those and explain a little bit about how we see the world evolving and some of the things we're doing to deliver that vision. So first up, before I get into that, I just wanted to kind of give a very quick overview of Uber. Many of you will have heard of us, sometimes not always for good reasons in recent past. But one thing that's really important about our company is our scale. And to be able to achieve this shift and really deliver the benefits to cities that we think can exist through this kind of combined multimodal shared transport, scale is really, really important. And so, we're still quite a young company, not even 9 years old. Every day, globally, we transport 15 million passengers. And to put that into context, if you added all the world's airlines together, every day they transport just 8 million passengers. So already, Uber is bigger than the world's airlines combined. And that translates to about 100 million customers, people using the app every month. We have completed in excess of 10 billion trips since we launched. And why is that important? Well, as a tech company, we try and make good decisions based on data. And so that just gives you a sense of the data set that we've got to draw on to understand how people move around cities. We're in over 600 cities globally. And the last number there, 28%, that represents a result from a recent YouGov survey here in London about 18 months ago, where 28% of Londoners said that they used to own a car but no longer do so because of services like Uber. Because actually they realised that if you can take out your phone, push a button, get a ride in a few minutes, actually you don't need to spend tens of thousands of pounds a year on owning your own car. So the first pillar of our vision of new mobility is around sharing. So already just the standard Uber service is a form of shared vehicle. Globally, we have about 25 passengers for every vehicle we have on the app. So already we're getting one car to do the work of 10 to 25 vehicles. But we don't want to stop there. We want to kind of push it forward to the next level. And this is where our car sharing service, Uber Pool, which is live here in London, comes in. We initially launched this service back in 2014. Globally, it's in 40 cities, and we've completed about 1 billion trips on Uber Pool alone. But it's been a constant iteration because, frankly, getting this product right is incredibly hard. But we've recently rolled out a new version of it here, which you might see in London, where actually what we do is it's called waiting and walking. So now, if you open up your phone and you click an Uber Pool service, there'll be a short wait before we can confirm which car is going to pick you up. Why do we do that? Well, it gives us a little bit of extra time to figure out the best vehicle to match you with, which is most likely to be going close to your destination, which is most likely to have another passenger in it as well. So we can match those rides. We also ask, you could walk maybe up to 200 meters to the nearest corner of the street. And so that means it's a much more efficient pickup for the driver. The route's much quicker. There's less detours. It's cheaper and you get to your destination faster. And why are we so excited about this product? Well, when you get two people sharing a car, 3 pretty awesome things happen. The first is you pay less, and we all like to pay a little bit less for getting around our city because you can split the fare with another passenger or 2 other passengers. The second thing is the driver makes more money because whilst the fare might be a bit lower, they've got more fare-paying passengers in their car. Their car is better utilised. And the third thing is you're actually replacing the need for an extra car. So one car can suddenly do the work of 2 or 3. And so we think with this latest innovation of dynamic carpooling, we're really at the forefront of this type of service globally, and really excited about the benefits it can have on city centres where congestion is such an issue. The next pillar I want to talk about was zero emission. So it's all very well having fewer shared cars on the road, but if they're spitting out kind of carbon dioxide, NOx, we know what an acute problem that is in major cities globally. And so we really see it is important not just to serve the cities where we operate better, but that transition to zero emission is beneficial for everyone, simply because electric vehicles, if any of you have ever been in one, much better experience. And ultimately, when you've got the charging infrastructure in place, it's much cheaper as well. Electric vehicles have fewer moving parts, so maintenance is cheaper, insurance is cheaper, and then obviously there's the fuel savings. But getting to a fully electric vehicle is pretty difficult if you're an Uber driver, and there are 3 problems, pretty big problems that we need to overcome if we're going to make this work. The first is the cars cost more. So as you might know, if you use Uber here in London, you're most likely to get into a Toyota Prius. It's going to be about 3 years old, and it will have cost the driver about £12,000 to buy that car. If they were going to move into a new electric vehicle, it's going to cost them about £21,000, £22,000. So there's a kind of financing gap for people to be able to bridge to move into these vehicles, even if they are cheaper to run. The second issue is the actual type of vehicle. So Uber drivers do about 200 miles a day, kind of max. You need a car with the range that can cover that. At the moment, there aren't many cars with that range. Probably Tesla is a few. I'd love it if every car was a Tesla, but we're not there yet. And so we need to make sure that a kind of mass market vehicle with the right range at the right price point is available. And then the third is about infrastructure. Not many Uber drivers have off-street parking, and so we need really kind of available rapid and ultra-fast charging in city centres, and that obviously presents a big challenge when you consider the grid and land availability. So those are the challenges we're working through. Really pleased to say we made a big step forward on solving the first challenge earlier this year. So in London, we launched the Clean Air Plan. So you'll notice that within Greater London, a 15p surcharge is added to every mile. We collect that money and give 100% to the driver to enable them to purchase or move into an electric vehicle. And we estimate that's going to generate between 200 and 250 million pounds over the next 5 years that will go directly into purchasing electric vehicles for drivers just in London. Obviously, still work to do on the OEMs, but kind of being able to generate that demand is obviously a really attractive opportunity if you're making electric vehicles. And the kind of certainty around the uptake of electric vehicles is proving really important in attracting investment into the infrastructure. And we're doing a lot of work right now on using our data to better understand where and what type of chargers need to be located around cities. Finally, I want to talk about the third pillar, which is multimodal transport. So cars aren't the only thing that we're excited to be electrifying. Bikes are too. So last year, we acquired a company called Jump that make e-bikes. And so for the first time, you could open your phone in cities around the US, and getting an Uber didn't just mean getting a car. You could seamlessly switch between getting an e-bike or getting a regular Uber or Uber pool. And frankly, we didn't quite know how this would go down with consumers. Conceptually, it feels like a good thing, providing more options, but there's certainly people worried about the impact it would have on our core business. And actually, the early results of the data have been pretty fascinating and encouraging too. So the first thing we saw was that, perhaps as you would expect, peak time for bikes are during the day when congestion's at its worst and the weather's better, hopefully. And obviously the most popular time for Uber cars are really early in the morning or late at night when people come out of pubs or it's dark or cold outside. And so there's this natural complementary nature between the two types, which is good if you want to kind of provide a one-stop mobility shop for people. The second thing we saw was actually there during those kind of busy times during the day when congestion is at its peak, we saw people stop taking cars, Uber cars, and taking bikes instead. And whilst that might sound concerning to the CFO, actually what we saw is net overall, people who did that took far more trips through the Uber app. So engagement with the service increased, which is really powerful when you're thinking about trying to change people's behaviors and preconceptions for how to move around the city. And this complementary nature isn't just isolated to cars and bikes. We've seen it with other modes of mass transport as well. And a really good example of this was when the night tube launched here in London, I think back in 2017. And frankly, we didn't know what the impact would be. Clearly, when people want to get home after going out, the tube is probably going to be cheaper. So is it going to be a competition to our business? Are we going to see trips go down? We didn't know. But it provided a really good case study. And the graphic behind me shows what we saw in the 6 weeks after the night tube launch versus the 6 weeks before. And we saw that there was actually, unsurprisingly, and represented by the red dots, a really big decrease in people requesting an Uber in the centre of town, when they come out of the pub or the theatre. But actually what we saw was there was a corresponding increase in requests at stops at the end of the line. So people were taking the tube most of the way home and then booking an Uber to take them that kind of last mile to their door in safety. And over time, we saw that overall trips grow. So actually we're seeing people who previously never went out, maybe because the cost was too prohibitive or they're just unsure about how to get home when the tube stopped. Now they could combine Uber and the tube to go out and access the services in the centre of town. And so a really positive benefit for the nighttime economy and the city as a whole. And so this, effectively, Uber was extending existing public infrastructure at no cost to the taxpayer. Now, this was a purely organic behavior that consumers were combining two modes of transport, but something that we really wanted to lean into and accelerate if at all possible. And so just about a month or so ago, on the 30th of January, another really big step for Uber as a company was in Denver in the US, we launched integration of public transport into the app. So now when you put in where you want to go, not only does it show UberX, Uber Pool, but it also surfaces public transport options. And the crazy thing about this is actually you see more often than not, it's quicker and faster to get some public transport. And in Denver, they're building in kind of ticketing. So suddenly you'll be able to not only kind of find out and plan your journey, but you'll be able to purchase the ticket through the app as well. It's very early days, but we're really excited about this. It's in conjunction with our ticketing partner, Masabi, and Move It that provide the data. And this is now something we're looking at really building out the functionality of the product and also scaling globally. So hopefully coming to a city near you very soon. So that's a really kind of brief canter through, and I haven't got too much more to say, but what we really believe is actually if we can combine and deliver shared, fully electric and multimodal transport, we can move from a city where actually urban design kind of forces people into car ownership with car parks, housing and suburbs not close to mass transport stations, into a place where actually city design can really change and not force people into car ownership, where they can really pick and choose multiple modes of transport to get around their city in a stress-free and efficient way.